Welcome to Routing for Success, the show where we interview today's top logistics professionals, giving them a platform to share their stories and best practices. Today we are talking with Steve Crawford. Steve has been a contractor for FedEx Ground line haul since 1995 and is still active in the business today. In this episode, Steve talks about the three pillars of running a FedEx Ground line haul business: safety, equipment, and staffing. He also shares some ways of thinking which have helped him to succeed through the years. And finally, Steve shares a story of how he was once arrested by the police and how that experience helped to shape his thinking. I am pleased to present to you my conversation with Steve Crawford. This episode is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. AP Equipment Financing can bring you the best deals on step vans, panel vans, cutaways, and more, deliver them straight to your facility, and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description to this episode or visit apfinancing.com. All right, we're here with Steve Crawford. Steve, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here. It's going to be a good day.
So give us a little bit about your background. We'll get into your FedEx business in a few moments, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've really been in the trucking business all my life. My dad had a small trucking company. We grew up in the northern part of South Dakota, a city called Aberdeen. And as I said, Dad was in trucking all his life. He actually started as a Teamster driver in 1935, 22 years in driving, went into management. And in like 1961, 62, realized that he wanted to get out on his own and started a business in Aberdeen. And this is back when we were highly regulated with the Interstate Commerce Commission and all that. So I basically grew up riding in trucks, helping even at the age of 8, go to the warehouse and whatever were light boxes that I could handle, whatever. And by the time I was 16, and back then you didn't need a CDL or anything like that. By the time I was 16 years old, I was driving some of the things locally. And Dad's health started to deteriorate when I was a freshman, probably around, say, 14, 15 years old. So by the time I was 17, I was ahead on my hours at school. I was getting out of school as a 17-year-old at noon going to work. And, and here I am, 50 some odd years later, still working, and I enjoy it. I'm glad that I'm still able to work, but it's been a lifelong career. I've done a few other things in addition to trucking, or I took a little break. Made a feeble attempt at college and played in a rhythm and blues and rock band for about a year and a half, and realized I wasn't going to make a lot of money doing that, so I went back to work. And actually, one of the things is when I was going to college, it was a music major, and so to be a teacher back then, it was $5,000 a year income and $10,000 a year to drive trucks. So you don't have to be smart to figure that one out. And so we moved to St. Louis area about 35 years ago. I got on, worked for my dad. Dad sold his company, and I worked for the people that bought it, and ended up leaving that to try some other things. And it all ended up everything merged together to move to St. Louis, and we've been here 35 years.
In a previous conversation, you had mentioned that when you moved into your home there, it was supposed to be a 5-year plan, and here you are 35 years later, right?
3 to 5 years later. I tell everybody we now can afford the house that we don't need.
So you're highly involved in the FedEx Ground line haul side of the business. I think most of the people tuning into this will probably know, but just quick review. FedEx has several different companies that operate under the umbrella of FedEx. You've got FedEx Express and FedEx Freight, which are corporate owned and operated. So if you see one of those trucks driving down the road, it's owned by FedEx. The person driving it is employed by FedEx. FedEx Ground, as its own entity, operates completely different with contractors. And even within FedEx Ground, there's really two different pieces to it. There's the last mile, or what we call pickup and delivery, which are the vans actually delivering the packages to your door. But then there's also line haul, which is Class 8 over-the-road trucks doing drop and hook, so picking up trailers and moving them from one hub to a terminal or from one terminal to another. And Steve, that's the part of the business that you're involved with. It's kind of a well-kept secret in the logistics world, I feel like. A lot of people who are even in trucking maybe don't even know about it. How did you first hear about FedEx Ground?
When I moved to St. Louis, the reason I came here was Roberts Express, which is now FedEx Custom Critical. Roberts Express had hired me as a recruiter. I was working for them part-time in South Dakota in their sales as a commissioned salesperson, but there's just not a lot of expedite out there in those rural areas. But they saw that I had a lot of experience and skill and understanding of regulations and whatnot. So they had me try recruiting, and I was doing well with that. So they moved me to St. Louis to be a recruiter. And I had seen RPS trucks, all over the place. And I was at a truck dealership, and the RPS guy was there, and his name was Rick Walker. And I introduced myself and said, hey, if you're ever looking for a part-time driver or something like that, just let me know. He ends up calling up. He had a guy with an injury, and could I cover for 6 weeks until the guy came back? Figured out that there was part of the work that he was doing, the trailer spots, that he didn't want to do that, so I made arrangements to buy a tractor. I had some other trucks leased at another company at that point. Well, actually, when I came down here for Roberts Express, I was an employee, and I left and became a contractor because I saw working for yourself was really what I wanted for the future. I didn't want to be a corporate employee for very long. I don't do well as working for somebody else, I guess. I can't. I'm 70 years old, and I can't hold down a job. And so in working with Rick, I got my foot in the door with RPS, and one truck, then another truck, and another truck, and then FedEx merged with them in 1999 or 2000 and became FedEx Ground. And I just continued to grow the business organically, and then we made an acquisition, and so I bought some routes, I've sold some routes, I've been awarded routes, I've given routes back. There's definitely anybody that's interested in getting into this business, and I'm even going to include the P&D side, which I don't have that much experience, but this really is a marathon. It's not a 40-yard dash. If you're getting into this because you want to cash out in 6 months or a year or two or something like that, yeah, there's a few success stories that follow that, but you get into this for the long haul.
And tell us about the state of your business today. How many trucks total? How many dedicated runs? How many unassigned?
On our E1, I think we have 29 positions, and it's like 19 of them are assigned, 10 are unassigned. And in some of the markets, even though they're unassigned, in smaller markets, they just use you all the time anyway, so it stays pretty busy. Then we also have spare trucks because you always have things in the shop, truck breakdown or weather, the trucks didn't get back and you got to send somebody else out. So right now we're operating 37 trucks, and we have some excess capacity there, but we've got a few trucks that are paid for, so I don't say I want to sell them cheap, it just makes sense to hang on to them. And I believe we have 34 full-time drivers, 2 part-time drivers, and then admin staff of like 3 or 4 people.
And how many stations are you running out of?
7.
7 stations.
Yep.
Okay, so that's a pretty spread out organization. Can you tell us a little bit about what your management structure is like? Obviously, you can't be in 7 places all at once.
Well, one of the things that I learned from working with my dad, and because the company that we were affiliated with operated under the Teamsters contract, and they had a provision of what you call a lead driver. We have a lead driver in every location, and in a sense, it's like being a manager, but you don't want to put yourself into a position where if you just say, hey, I need a manager, well, then they think they're driving a desk, not driving a truck, and they have to do a little bit of both. And then that lead driver takes care of responsibilities like, do inspections on the trucks, make sure that everything's working, get it to the shop. I don't hire them to be mechanics, but they can change light bulbs, change air lines, simple things like that. And then in our eastern operation, which is Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia, which is I guess it's 4 locations over there. We have a manager that's over all that, but he's able to drive. And over here on the western side, where we've got Illinois, Missouri, and Arkansas, my son Jason is involved overall in the business, but he's primarily heavily involved in this western part. And then we have a manager / driver that's in Springfield, Missouri, and he goes to any locations that we'll need to send him to. So, and when
Steve,
I send him, he goes to talk to drivers, look at trucks, and everything like that. He doesn't necessarily have to go there to drive.
Yeah, so the concept of kind of a player coach instead of someone being a full-time manager, actually having them
right,
do something aside from manage. So, Steve, you've been doing this for a long time. You had mentioned that you've grown organically, you've purchased routes, you've scaled up, scaled down. Let's get into some best practices. I mean, obviously, I think it's safe to say that you've been successful in this business, and a lot of people aren't successful. What do you feel like has allowed you to, continue going for this long and experience or achieve the level of success that you have?
Well, I think part of it is, and it's not just for this industry, but it's for all industries, you never stop learning. I consider myself, and it may sound like I'm bragging, and it's not my intent, but I'm a lifelong learner. I'm still going to learn some things this week, this month. When I have casual conversations with people, I tell them sometimes I'm Yoda and sometimes I'm Luke. There's a lot of value in learning from your peers. So you try some things and they don't work, well, then stop doing it and try something else that's working. And so, the opportunities are there, but having a filter of, there were some times that opportunities came up and I looked at them and, gee, that'd be nice to get that, and I didn't get it and I was disappointed. Found out 18 months later that customer had left. It would have been devastating to get him. So back to where I was saying earlier, where it's a marathon, having the patience to grow the business, not that it's just organically, but to grab the opportunities when they're there. But if you have a chance to learn something about maintenance, or you have a chance to learn something about taxes, fuel taxes, any of the things that affect us, so how do we administer a good safety program? I really admired the people that my dad worked with, and one gentleman in particular really was well known for taking care of his people. So we like to think that we're one of the better employers around because are we intricately involved with the employee? Well, not really that way, but we care about the help. We want them to have a good job. We want them to earn decent money. Now, yes, everybody would love to earn more money. Both you and me fall in that category probably anyhow. And so it's really, is there just one thing that you could say drives the success? I think it would be hard to identify one, but the three pillars of success for line haul, and I think this would spill over into P&D, is that we have to have a safety program that fits FedEx. The second thing is that we're an equipment company, whether you are in P&D and you got P1000s or vans or straight trucks. In line haul, you can have tandems, you can have single axles, you can have day cabs, you can have sleepers, or you're doing line haul, or you're doing trailer spots. There's segments within the segments, and understanding and knowing what equipment you need. Now, primarily, I'm all short haul. I do not have any sleepers, and my drivers are home every day. And so that's a market that I selected. So I need to understand the equipment that I'm providing for FedEx. Then the other third pillar is that we're a staffing company. And I had to give credit to a couple of guys, John Haldy and David Cooper, have shared these same things with me, that these ideas basically were affirmations, confirmations for them. So we're a safety company, we're an equipment company, we're a employer sourcing, we're sourcing the drivers. And so you got to focus on those three pillars. Or what are we doing that's safe every day? Do we have the right equipment? What is your equipment plan? Some people keep trucks a long time and they're able to maintain them. They have a shop. Other people keep trucks 3, 4, 5 years and they're constantly upgrading, moving out the old equipment. There's not one that's right or wrong. It's whatever fits your operation. Likewise with the employees, you want to select good people, do what you can to keep them, and have them take care of your trucks, have them take care of being safe. And so you got to, it's not that it's one third, but every day you got to have those three things in your mind.
So give us 1 to 2 things that you do in each of those categories. And obviously everyone runs their business a little bit different. You had just mentioned that there's no one right way to do it, but safety, equipment, and staffing. Can you give us, what are 1 or 2 things that are foundational to your organization in each of those categories?
Well, I actually use the word SEE, as our operating values. It stands for safe, excellent, and effective. Now, how does the equipment and the drivers fit in there? Well, number one is safety. Whenever we do, we have to do it in a safe manner. We don't want anybody getting hurt. You don't want to have any type of injuries, accidents that are devastating or anything like that. And not only that, but you have to show that you're doing it. You got to have the compliance. You got to do your inspections. You got to do your safety training, the things that FedEx requires. So, but every day when we come to work, we have to have the number one core value. We need to be safe. Excellent means get the job done. Well, you can't be excellent if you got a truck breaking down. You can't be excellent if you don't have a driver or don't have the right driver. And then effective is produce the desired result. Yeah, we want to, what are the desired results? Well, you want to earn a profit. There's no doubt about that. But desired result also is satisfied employees, satisfactory equipment. That spills over from excellent to effective. But in that case, they're in rank order. If a driver says, hey, I've got a problem with the tire, well, go ahead. We want to save money. Go ahead and run it today. We'll fix it tomorrow. No, we don't do things like that. We'll fix the tire right away. We may have a conversation about why didn't you call us yesterday, but that's part of your employee situation. And excellence, there may be a day that we have to do something different so that the customer, and I look at it that we have two customers. FedEx is the customer, and then FedEx customers are our customers. And if we have to do something extra for satisfaction or excellence, yeah, maybe that costs us a few bucks. But in the long haul, again, it being a marathon, you build a reputation that you're reliable. And so, anybody who wants to use those are welcome to, but it's just got to be safe. We have to be excellent. We have to be effective.
Steve, you are not the first person to mention that proving yourself to be reliable with FedEx can really carry you a long way, particularly with line haul. I've had several other people on this podcast mention that. How do you do that? You had mentioned that you have not a lot, but you have spare capacity. Is that the key? Just have spare capacity so that when opportunities come up, you can jump on it and be a problem solver? Or what does that actually look like for your organization?
It's several things, but a lot of it, when you start out small, you got to have, I've always operated on, you got to have a contingency plan. Now, I had the benefit that as a truck driver, when I started here, when I only had 3 trucks and there were just 3 of us driving, and then we finally got to the point where I had a 3rd driver, and so I was my own extra. Because if you got 3 trucks and one guy calls off sick, that's a third of your business is gone that day. And so I was always available to jump into a truck and do whichever. Obviously, I was much younger at the time. But as we built the business, you build in your contingency plans, and it's like, okay, if somebody calls in sick here, maybe you've got a replacement driver, or it might be this guy called in sick, so you move this guy over here, move this guy over here, and I jump in on the tail end, whatever it is. But think your contingencies through ahead of time. You don't have to overwork it. You don't have to make yourself crazy over it, but have a contingency plan. But if your heart's desire isn't to get the packages to where they're going, then you're not going to succeed. Yeah, are we selling our souls to FedEx? I don't want to have it be like that drastic, but they contract with us because they expect a certain job to be done. When you go to the dentist and you have to have a tooth pulled, you expect him to pull the right tooth. Well, when FedEx contracts with us and this load needs to get to where it's going, they know that things can happen and go wrong, but we signed up to be a very precise type of service. There's other parts of trucking where you can just go haul groceries or whatever, and if you get there in 2 days or 3 days or your appointment was missed and come back tomorrow, that's not what we do here. This is very time definite, and that can cause problems in that you with it being time definite, oh, well, let's hurry up and speed and we'll get it there quicker. No, now you've crossed the line on safety. But when your focus is we're here to provide service, and then your responses are service oriented. And so in my mind, we just have a lot of contingency plans. And as you grow the business, and this is a statistic I took from a FedEx manager who used to be a UPS manager, is staff at 110%. This fellow that I'm referring to was a UPS manager in the St. Louis market. If they needed 100 drivers, they had 110. And so I have even, because how do you get a fraction of a driver or whatever? But I've always looked at, we have to have about 110 to 113% capacity to be able to do what we're supposed to do, because people do take vacations, or there's a death in the family, grandma dies and you want to go to the funeral, or your kid has a special event at school and you want to be able to do it. People have to live their lives. And so if you have contingency plans to cover things, then that's a big help. And there are times that you will fail at FedEx, but if you go to them and say, hey, look, I failed on this because this happened, but here's my answer, and tomorrow I'm going to do this, or next week I'm going to do that, by and large, that will work. Now, if you're constantly failing every week and you're constantly having an excuse every week, that starts to damage your reputation. But if and nobody's going to be 100%, but if you're in that top tier of service, that you're taking care of them, you're taking care of customers, you're being safe, then, your chances of success are not guaranteed, but they're an awful lot better.
And within FedEx specifically, what does it actually mean, or what does it look like for an opportunity to come up? So you've positioned yourself to run a good organization. You've got 110% staffing, so that you're always staffed up well. You're performing. What does it actually look like to be a FedEx contractor and have an opportunity present itself? I mean, does the terminal manager tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, Steve, I've got a dedicated run opening up. I think you'd be a good fit for it? Or what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, if you're already in as a contractor, the process is, and there's some deviations too of what FedEx can do. It's their game, their rules. In a lot of cases, they'll do what they want to do. But there is a process of if it's new business, it comes out in a website. It's called buildthegroundbiz.com. And if you sign up there, you will get email notifications. I got one today. There's a run opportunity, a signed run in some small station in Georgia. I'm not interested. Probably one of the greatest features that we have working for us today is the delete button. If it doesn't pertain, delete, it's gone. But in that process, then they will, if they're adding capacity from the outside, you submit on some people would call it an application. It's RFI, request for information, stating what you have, your corporate entities, what is your safety plan, what is your service plan, things that FedEx is going to know that they're going to ask the same type of questions that we've just been discussing. What are you going to do in peak? What are you going to do if you have call-offs? What is you have a maintenance problem with trucks? Where are you getting your trucks? What is your capitalization? All those kind of things they'll want to know. If you're already in and in a station or a hub where they've got excess capacity, they have unassigned runs, and a new assigned run comes up, it'll be posted internally on MGBA, the My Ground account, where you have to enter in with your password, and you'll get a notification there, and you bid for it and give them the truck numbers that you're putting in, and then they're going to evaluate your safety, your service, and service really is broken into two different capacities. When you get dispatched, are you breaking down? Are you getting there on time? Are you failing in the actual run? And the other is your ability to accept the run. If I don't have a driver today, well, when I say it's okay, it's not that it's okay, but you can have a certain percentage of declines. But if you go over a certain threshold, then you get to where, hey, they call it an opportunity it might be a letter of intent, and then opportunity to cure. Hey, Steve, you're below the threshold. We need you to do something. And I've had that happen. We've had it where we've had driver issues. A couple of years ago, when business was strong, it was hard to get drivers, and we were at the threshold with some, and we had to put some plans together. But that's if somebody's on the outside looking to get in, right now there's not a lot of new routes. Business is down from where it was post-COVID, and so there's not that many free routes that are being offered out at FedEx. There's some people that want to enter this business in the line haul, particularly by buying an existing contractor that's selling, and that would be a whole podcast for another day. But all I can say is do your due diligence. Be sure you know what you're buying before you enter in.
For someone who is interested in getting into the business, it's easy to look at things just through the lens of, kind of general business expertise. Okay, well, what's the EBITDA, as a percentage of revenue, and try to come up with some calculations. But that doesn't tell the whole picture. And there's probably some pitfalls, that someone who's inexperienced in FedEx might not be able to identify if they're looking at an opportunity. Steve, what advice would you have for someone who is trying to get into FedEx where they don't have the experience firsthand to identify is this a good opportunity? Is it viable or not? What are the pitfalls to watch out for?
Well, you would want to get a neutral advisor, if you will, somebody that's not necessarily connected to the seller, so that they can dig into the actual, what are the numbers behind the numbers. There's been, and like in the case of my company where it's a small business, my pickup truck is owned by the company and it pays for his gasoline. Okay, well, that shows as an expense, but that's, whoever buys the business would not be taking that over. So that's a source of income. Look at how much administrative expenses do you have? How much is a driver turnover? How much are you paying your drivers? What do you have for benefits for the drivers? What are the maintenance expenses? All the different things that would fall into a due diligence package. There are people out there, including myself, that will take a look at that for the prospective buyers. Probably one of the confusing percentages, one of the confusing factors is you may hear that it's this percentage profit or that percentage of margin or whatever. Well, what does that really mean? Because you've got your direct expense. You're hauling the freight, so you've got to pay for the driver. You have to pay for your taxes, whatever, work comp that goes with the driver. You've got fuel. You got maintenance for the trucks. You can take an average cents per mile or percentage of revenue that goes for all those factors. And then with what's left over, you have to pay for the truck. Well, if you're buying the truck, even though it's a depreciating asset, it's an asset. If you're leasing the trucks from one of the many leasing companies out there, that is a financial obligation every month, but you have no equity in it. So when people say, hey, we have X percent as a margin, does that include lease payments? Does it not include lease payments? So does it include, and if you have a truck that's leased or if you own the truck, you still have to have your insurance. Who's paying for the federal highway use tax? Who's paying for the base plates? All those kind of things you have to dig into. So somebody new getting in might be a successful businessman and understand financing. But when I say financing, the financial, read a P&L statement, whatever. But they still, you want to dig into and ask the right questions. And if you don't know the questions, you need to ask somebody that does so they can ask on your behalf or tell you what they are.
So Steve, let's shift gears a little bit. I know that you're very active on, social media and always trying to help out other people and lend advice. And one of the things I always hear you talk about, Steve, is kind of your internal philosophy of how you like to think about problems and approach opportunities for yourself. And we were talking about this the other day when we were just catching up on the phone. Tell us a little bit about what is your internal philosophy when you think about growing an organization and probably just growing in life?
Yeah, well, and even outside of the organization, there's contribution that we can make to other people. And one of the things that's, call it a passion, a hot button for me, is that I like to see other people succeed. And it's weird. It's not like I'm taking it out as my fight, but I hate to see somebody that has the potential, and we hear that growing up, you've got a lot of potential and everything like that. But when sometimes people get held back, and it's when I say they're held back, the thing that's bottom line really is we're held back by fear. And so, what's the cause of the fear? Well, then it becomes who is holding you back. And my biggest enemy is me. Your biggest enemy is probably you, because of things that get going in our head of I can or can't do that. And illustration is, as I mentioned, growing up in South Dakota, a very comfortable upbringing, enjoyed, I can't go back and say I had all these kind of issues, problems, whatever. But in that environment, people share their thoughts, and that's okay. But the brain is very logical, and we start gathering all this data in. Well, most of the people, my parents included, but it was friends, relatives, whatever, that's kind of a close-knit culture up there in the Dakotas. You don't want to leave South Dakota. You don't want to live in a big city. You don't want to work for a big company. You certainly don't want to work for roadways. So you kind of have those thoughts going. Well, all those four things that I just said, by the time I was 35, I had done all of them. So you can't say never, because never comes sooner or later. And so I look at it, if you say we have to face your fears, I just use that word face. And it's not so much that it's like a 3-step or 4-step system, but F stands for foundation, A for action, C for courage, E for equipping. And if you think of it as a circle, you can enter at any point, but basically your foundation is that you have to have a foundation of truth. And I'm taking this as a clip from a movie that was out probably 12 years ago. It was called 7 Days in Utopia. But Robert Duvall is one of the prime actors, and he's coaching a young golfer, and he says you have to have a conviction of your foundation, because if you don't, the casual comment from somebody else will distract you and throw you off your game. So if I'm trying to build a business and I really want to do this, if I don't have that kind of conviction of my foundation, then somebody says, well, hey, you should, there's an opportunity in Albuquerque, or hey, there's this thing here. If you do this or that. Now, it's not that you shouldn't take advice from other people, but the advice, even like right now, as I'm getting older, what's going to be happening and selling off part of the business? Well, I'm getting all kinds of influence, all kinds of comments from people, but it still boils down to, okay, I want to generate this much money. I want to take care of my people. I want to reduce my liabilities. I want to reduce my work day. Those are the foundational things. So whatever idea comes through, the foundation really becomes like a filtering system. Is that, wait, does this piece of advice that I just got, or this comment that I got, does it fit my filters? And if it does, great, pay attention to it. But if it doesn't, well, then don't waste your time with it. And action, I'll never sell part of my business if I don't run an ad. And I have an ad out right now. We've got some runs opportunities in Columbus that I'm looking to get rid of. For some people, it's maybe not related to work. You got to sign up for a class, take that vacation, read that book, take action. Sitting back and doing nothing won't get you there. And it takes a little bit of courage. And courage, as a matter of fact, I've got my computer open here. There's a fellow that I follow. I'm going to just, his name is David Anderson. He's got some really great material. I want to make sure that I can get to it. Courage, this is from Dave. Courage is acting despite or perceived actual risk. Now, if you're going to be a businessman, you're going to take on some risk, and you got to take action. And that risk, as he said, might be perceived. Oh, there might be this, might be that. Well, okay, you have to evaluate it. You don't go. You don't put yourself into harm's way just because there's that you want to take a risk. You got to take it. What is the potential outcome? You're not going to go walk in the woods alone at night if you know that it's infested with bears. That's probably not a good decision. And so that courage has to be based on taking a risk, trying something that's maybe a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And that's the thing, is that we get comfortable in our comfort zones, and there's no growth inside a comfort zone. And the equipping is that, hey, in order for me to understand business, I did not get a college degree, but I did go to a business school. I took intro to accounting, and I took business finance, I think it was, because I wanted to learn that. I sign up for webinars. I participate. When I do something like this with you, I learn at the same time that I'm helping others. So that those 4 things, foundation, action, courage, and equipping, we have to look at for ourselves, because you want to learn how to play a sport. You want to learn how to play a musical instrument, something like that. There's plenty of ways that we can hold ourselves back. And like I said, we can be our own worst enemy. So being able to filter it out so that we take action, because otherwise, if you don't do that, if you're not living the life you want to live, then you're in a prison. But that prison is built with anxiety and worry and doubt and guilt and shame and things like that. And there's just no value in living that way.
Steve, can you give us some examples or stories from your own life where having this sort of philosophy has served you?
The recent one, I've really been looking at, like right now, what do I want to do with the business? Business is down a little bit. There's always an opportunity to add something somewhere or sell something. And well, hey, you could do this, you could do that, and how about this, and how about that? So I went back to my basics. Here's what I want for my people. Here's what I want for my finances. Here's what I want for my day-to-day working. And so just even say within the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been getting a data dump coming into me. And I sat and, okay, the long term is that all this advice has been good, but in order for me to get this, this, and this, I have to follow plan A. And plan A is that we're selling off some routes. It was a risk when I came to St. Louis. We left the comfort of South Dakota. I had a business up there that had not been real successful, so I came down here without very much money, and just took a risk. Is this job going to work out? And the job did work out. It worked so well that I realized I don't want to work for corporate America, and I ended up with my own business. But if I had not taken that action step to say, hey, we're going to move, we're going to go ahead, and the action step took a risk, so it took a certain amount of courage. And I'll tell you, when we were leaving South Dakota, my wife was not thrilled with the fact that we had made that decision. Now that we've been here 35 years, I asked her if she wants to go back. No way. So, time has a way of changing a lot of things for us. But I can even think back to where, what are some other attributes that enter into this? One of them is patience. In the late 90s, because I started with RPS in 95, in the late 90s, there was a run that opened up. That actually would have been 2 runs, both team runs. Money would have been fantastic, and it would have solved a lot of financial problems that I had. And I didn't get the runs. I was disappointed, but, just kept doing what I'm doing. Well, it was a customer that was a book publisher, and they left RPS and went to the post office, and those 2 runs went away. That would have bankrupted me. And so sometimes you learn your lessons down the road. You don't learn them immediately. But just those kind of things of accomplishments and being willing to take a little bit of a risk, they have to be educated. And sometimes you have to know when to say yes. The other times you have to know when to say no. There's some opportunities out there right now in the line haul world that make sense for someone else, but they don't make sense for me. And I have to figure out how to do that. And if I let fear dominate my thinking, then I'm not going to be effective.
Steve, there was some story about you getting arrested. What can you tell us about that? What happened?
Yeah, I will. And so that all the listeners, don't stop now, wait for the story, because it was a false arrest. It was in end of July 2008. And it was like on a Thursday night, would have been early Friday morning. There's a knock at our door, and it's like, oh, what's going on? And the way our house is configured, I can look out the window and see that there's police officers out there. And it's like, oh, this can't be good. And so I go to the door and I open it, and there's 3 officers there, 3 county sheriffs, and we have 3 adult sons that don't live at home, but we've got 3 adult sons out there, and it's just like, oh man, this can't be good. First out, Steve Crawford reaches out, shakes my hand, and I shake it, spins me around, cuffs me, you're under arrest. There's a whole big story with this, but it ends up a different Steve Crawford that was like 20 years younger. I've got gray hair that's short, he's got long brown hair. Easily 60 to 70 pounds lighter than what I am, had been involved in a hit and run accident at a location in St. Louis County. I live in St. Charles County. And so I guess they just look up a name. What happened was he went through a drive-through restaurant and paid for his food with a credit card, which is Steve Crawford, and hit a vehicle when he was leaving. And apparently he had been drinking, but that's, I'm not here to judge that. But they took about 8 hours to figure out they had the wrong guy. And this is was the intro, if you will, of thinking about it. When I finally got out, if I would have said, gee, I like it here, I'm going to, because you had a place to sleep, a place to live, and they got 3 meals a day. If I said, gee, I want to stay here, you'd think I'm crazy. I was glad to get out. And, so I was arrested on bad information. But more importantly, when it was over, they realized that, hey, I don't want to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. And that really put me on this crusade, if you will, of helping other people to get out of the so-called prison of fear. There's, if something is holding us back because of our thoughts, we're not supposed to be there. I think it's intended for us to live quality lives. Now, some people have had traumatic experiences when they were young, or some type of, a death in the family or an abusive relationship or something. Listening to me is not the answer. They might need to get some kind of counsel, whatever, so that they can get the help that they really need to have. But by and large, that experience of being falsely accused and then spending 8 hours in the jail, not only was it a time for reflection, but realizing that, hey, we just don't need to live a restricted life. And that really was a springboard for me to have that be an outlook on life inside of my business and outside.
Steve, we're coming up on our time. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Any other subjects you want to tackle while you have this platform?
For the listeners that are out here, if they are, if they're contemplating something in life, put together the team that you need to help make the decisions. I've become acquainted with a gentleman who lives up in Canada. Name is John Robertson. And the way that he puts it is that as you're headed to your destination, and it's like you're in a boat going down the river, you need people in the boat with you rowing. You don't need people on the shore yelling, row harder or row faster. And so when you're making decisions about life, when you're making decisions about your business, have a team in place that you can discuss those kind of things. And I'll just put a plug out there. If you go to stevecrawford411.com, there's a place where you can connect with me. And if we need to have a conversation about something, I am open and welcome to doing that, because one of my next steps of life is to coach people and help them accomplish what they want to accomplish. It's not that I've accomplished everything that I need to, but I just call it a payback. When I was young, there was a lot of people that were my mentors, and I want to be in that position to help other people.
So that was stevecrawford411.com for anyone who wants to reach you.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm glad that we were finally able to make this happen. It's been a long time coming. I appreciate you coming onto the podcast.
You bet. It's been great being here. Thanks for having me.
Routing for Success is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. In today's competitive market, it is essential to acquire the right trucks at a fair price and finance them in a way that makes sense for your business. Leveraging their extensive network of truck and van suppliers, the experts at AP Equipment Financing will help you locate the best deals on step vans, cutaways, panel vans, and more. Deliver them straight to your facility and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description or visit apfinancing.com for more information. Routing for Success is an independent production of AP Equipment Financing and is in no way affiliated with or endorsed by FedEx Corporation, FedEx Ground, Amazon, or any other logistics company discussed herein. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Routing for Success.